How would life be like if all our dreams came actually true? Minoru Kaganu doesn't have to ask this question, because that is the exact life he is living in the anime. While other students are interested in the activities of Akane Nishino, the girl from a wealthy family, Kageno remains indifferent. After school hours, Nishino had to walk back home when her driver failed to show up. Unknown to Nishino, the driver had been beaten up, and those responsible were still on the street. These same thugs subsequently kidnap Nishino, and ransom is demanded from her parents. Before the Nishino's abductors would abuse her, the stylish thug slayer jumps in and saves the day. The most exciting part is that this mysterious man was also Kageno. Although Nishino didn't know who it was during and after the incident, she now had a feeling that Kageno was disguising, but she never got the chance to find out. Kageno got into an accident a few days later and died on the spot. But his dreams of living in two worlds continued to exist. Kageno is reincarnated as Chid Kagenu in an alternate world. Episode 2. Kageno continued his lifestyle by fighting bandits at night and living like an average kid during the day. On one of these occasions, Kageno cures an elven girl and later deceives her by telling her that she is a descendant of heroes. So, she must find a way to defeat the cult of Diabolos. Meanwhile, the name was something he just made up. The elven girl, Alpha, believed everything that Kageno told her and quickly formed a group called Shadow Garden. Kageno also has a sister, Claire, who has just turned 15, meaning she will be leaving for the Midgar Academy of Dark Knights in the royal capital. On the day of her departure, Claire goes missing. Kageno tells Bitu, a member of the Shadow 7. They quickly drafted a plan to find his sister. At the same time, Viscount Grease, a senior officer of the cult of Diabolos, was busy interviewing Claire. Before long, Sid and the Shadow 7 attack the hideout. Claire is rescued with minimal injuries. Episode 3. After the rescue mission, the Shadow 7 informs Sid of their decision to pursue the cult of Diabolos globally. Sid found it hard to believe that the cult of Diabolos was real, but he didn't stop the girls from leaving. A few years later, Sid also turned 15 and had to enroll in the Midgar Academy for Dark Knights. In his new institution, Sid makes friends with Skell and Poe. According to their agreement, anyone among them who scored the least score had to propose to Princess Alexia. Surprisingly, when Sid proposes to Alexia, she agrees to it. Alexia then persuades Sid to join her fencing class. It was here that Sid got to learn the truth about their mismatched relationship. Mr. Zenon, the royal fencing instructor, had been betrothed to Alexia. So, whatever they had was not real. The pair had an intense argument, ending with Sid agreeing to play along in the relationship. A few days later, the couple had a dispute on a train before going into their dorms. The following day, it is announced that the princess is missing, and guess who was one of the prime suspects? It was none other than Sid. Episode 4. Sid is arrested and taken in for questioning. Meanwhile, Alexia finds herself being tied to a chair. Her abductors were working for the cult, and they planned to take her blood. When Alexia's royal blood is injected into the beast-like creature close by, it will help revive it. When Sid is finally released, he teams up with the Shadow 7 to locate Alexia. Alpha had been able to grow her group to become more than 100. Together, they can come up with a plan to find Alexia. Sid returns to those who had earlier arrested him and murdered them. When the kidnapper notices that some organized group is closing in on him, he infects the prototype of Alexia's blood into the creature. The creature immediately changes into something dreadful and kills the abductor. Then, it frees the princess from her bonds. While Alexia thinks she has found safety, she is suddenly attacked by her fiancé, Zenon, who is also a member of the cult. Sid appears just in time and introduces himself as Shadow. Episode 5. Sid fights with Zenon and, at a point, gets overpowered by him. When the tide changes, Zenon takes pills to increase his strength. On the other hand, Iris is being overwhelmed by the monster. Alpha later shows up and single-handedly subdues the creature. Sid also finishes the battle with Zenon using his atomic powers, killing him. Alexia, who is now free, is reunited with her sister. Back at the academy, Alexia tells Sid that there are some facts about the case that she felt were unclear. Sid didn't seem to be interested in the conversation, so she switched it up and brought up Zenon's death. Alexia asks Sid if he wants them to continue dating. Sid responds negatively. On that same day, blood was found close to the walls where Sid and Alexia had been talking. The incident remained a mystery because no student was found missing. It was labeled the bodiless murder and was recorded among the 7 mysteries in the school's history. Episode 6. An unknown killer disguises as Shadow and goes ahead to murder an innocent man. Sid hears about this from members of the Shadow Garden. On the way to the dorm, Sid discovered that Alexia had tracked down the impersonator herself. Sid watches Alexia fight through the impersonator from a distance, but later intervenes when other persons can join in against Alexia. Shadow threatens to make them pay with their lives. When Shadow moves to pursue them, Alexia halts him to inquire about his motives and goals. Shadow responds by saying that it was none of her business. Sid manages to apprehend the impersonators and kills them. Meanwhile, Alexia had seen enough to form her conclusion. She meets with her sister, Iris, and tells her that the Shadow Garden is not responsible for the recent evil in the Royal. It was a different organization, and their goal was most likely to defame the Shadow Garden. At the end of the discussion, Iris convinces Alexia that the two organizations are their enemies. Episode 7. At the Bushin festival, Sid puts up a good fight against Rosa Oriana. With this, he gains the respect of all other students. Meanwhile, a girl Sid had earlier given flowers at the library took it to mean that Sid was interested in her. She approaches him after the Bushin festival and asks that they be friends. On what seemed like an ordinary day at the academy, mysterious men broke in, ambushed the students, and announced they were there to take over the academy. While the other students remained calm, Rosa Oriana refused to be quiet. She mocked the men for coming into a school for dark nights. However, she soon learns that their magic is useless. Just before Rosa could be killed, Sid jumps in and takes the shot on her behalf. Sid is seen lying lifeless on the floor. Was Sid dead, or is it just another trick? Episode 8. The terrorists then moved all the students to the auditorium, leaving Sid alone. Sid rises to his feet and begins to monitor the situation. All this while, when everyone thought that Sid was dead, he had stopped his heart from beating. Sid quietly takes out some of the men. At the same time, the terrorists continue to search for an artifact studied by Sherry. The terrorists can locate Sherry's room, but before they can steal it from her, she escapes. Sherry and Sid will meet in the assistant principal's room to discuss the way forward. It turns out that the terrorists were using a weapon, the Eye of Avarice. With this, they can stop everyone from using magic. The artifact that Sherry has been studying is a control unit for the Eye of Avarice. A member of the Shadow Garden, Nu, meets up with Sid and informs him that other group members are ready to take orders. Sid instructs them to wait till the Eye of Avarice is disabled before they can fight back. Episode 9. Sherry modifies the artifact and gets it ready for use. Before going into the tunnels, she remembers how her mother was murdered when she was still a child, and how Lutheran had been there for her all along. Sherry expresses gratitude to Sid for standing by her. When Sherry arrives at the auditorium, she activates the artifact, and the Eye of Avarice is automatically disabled. Rosa notices that their magic is back and announces it to her colleagues. Shadow and the actual garden members join the battle against the terrorists. Rose guides the students to escape while the fight is ongoing. Since there were no more hindrances, Iris and the Knight went inside to help, but to their surprise, the terrorists were all dead, and the students were safe. Rose gives Iris the details of what transpired. She makes him know that the terrorists were impersonators of the Shadow Garden. Elsewhere, Sherry, who is searching for her father, runs away to escape being burnt by the fire from the gas pipes. Sid enters Lutheran's office and discovers he is the cult. Lutheran has been the one responsible for the whole ambushment. Sid demanded to know his reason, and Lutheran's story is unbelievable. Lutheran used to be among the top sword fighters in the world before sickness got a hold of him. To cure his sickness, he had to go into deep research. To help him with this, he gave Lucrea, Sherry's mother, the resources needed for the research. Lutheran's investment paid off as he found the artifact he sought, but there was only one major challenge. Lucrea thought the Eye of Avarice was too powerful to be in the hands of just one man, so she decided it was best to give it to the government. Lutheran then admitted to killing Lucrea because she disagreed with him. After the confession, Lutheran and Sid go into a fight. Shadow kills Lutheran using the same method that Lutheran had earlier described. Just when Lutheran was taking his last breath, Sherry walked in. Shadow refrains himself from telling her the truth about her father. Episode 10. After the incident at Midgar Academy, Sid receives a letter from Alpha urging him to go to the Lindworm City. Sid was not the only one contacted for this mission, as Beta, Epsilon, and Nu also got the message. The goddess trial will be taking place in Lindworm City, and this place is unique because of what it signifies. The goddess Beatrix bestowed powers to the 3 legendary heroes in this city. While Sid is focused on the mission, Rose is set on marrying Sid. Sid didn't know what to make of the attention from Rose. He starts avoiding her on the train. On arrival at Lindworm, Rose and Sid go to the market and stop by a few shops. Rose was excited to see Beta, a famous writer, so she quickly joined the queue. Meanwhile, when Sid inspects some of Beta's works, it is evident that she had plagiarized the works of literature from the modern world. Nevertheless, Sid grabs a copy of the book and gets it signed by Beta, who uses this opportunity to write an ancient language briefing for him about the present situation. Although Rose ends up seeing the code, she is unable to tell what it means because of her limited linguistic knowledge. The next evening, tragedy strikes as a member of the cult murders the Archbishop of the Beatrix Church. In his pursuit, Sid manages to locate one of the individuals responsible, only for them to meet their end at the hands of Epsilon. However, Sid discovers that the main culprit they have been hunting is still at large. Episode 11. Meanwhile, Sid decides to visit a hot spring to relax. While there, he stumbles into his ex-girlfriend Alexia Midgar. They both got talking, and Alexia discovers that Sid is unaware of the goddess trial. She clarifies that during this yearly event, the sanctuary's doors are unlocked for a single day. It was a time when worthy challengers get to summon ancient warriors for battles. Alexia reveals that she's on a mission. Sid, however, tells Alexia that he's in Lindworm solely because a friend invited him. The truth was that Alexia had come to the city to find out more about the Archbishop, but by the time she arrived in Lindworm, the Archbishop was already dead. The officials did not allow Alexia to do any investigation, since the people were not cooperating with her. Alexia then decides to go to the annual event also known as the Goddess of Trial. The competitors are given the opportunity to summon any ancient warrior. Although Sid never planned to participate, he was surprised when his name was called as one of the competitors. The contest was famous for the danger associated with it. Notwithstanding, a lot of persons were still eager to participate and would even go as far as paying the sum of 100,000 zeni to fight these past warriors. Sid enters the battlefield disguised as Shadow and summons Aurora, who is known to be the Witch of Calamity. Years ago, Aurora had used her powers to cause confusion all around the world. She was later apprehended and sealed by hero Olivier. Since it had been centuries ago, most persons including Sid didn't know much about her. Sid was confident that she would cause him much trouble. However, when the battle began, Aurora unleashed old techniques that Sid wasn't conversant with. At first, Sid didn't take her seriously. He was busy dodging all her attacks and didn't bother to go on the offensive. After a while, Sid finally ends the fight with one move. Everyone present was at loss for words. Episode 12. While walking away, Sid observes that he was been followed by the sanctuary door. Sid later gave up and entered the door only to see white light everywhere. In the midst of everything, Sid meets the most unexpected person, Aurora. She was being held in captivity which had lasted for ages. Sid frees her and they both start looking for a way to escape from the sanctuary. Back in the event, the sanctuary gate had opened up at the center of the stadium. Those around are told to exit the place, leaving only Alexia, Iris, Nelson, and some guards. At this moment, the Shadow Garden appears. They attack the guards and forcefully take Nelson with them into the sanctuary. There was no way Alexia and Iris would have stayed back. They both followed them in to find out how the drama would end. Upon reaching the sanctuary, Alpha gathers everyone and shares the legend of how the demon Diabolos's arm was sealed away at this very place. However, she shifts the conversation to the cult of Diabolos. Nelson wasn't too excited about this topic, but Alpha disregarded his reaction and went on to open the massive gate ahead. The acting archbishop was visibly stunned by this. Alpha reveals that a historic battle took place right at that spot. In an instant, a blinding white light envelops everything, transporting Shadow Garden, Nelson, Iris, and Alexia back in time. They witness the reality of the past, where the cult gathered orphan children for their inhuman and disturbing experiments within those very walls. The experiments were so brutal that only a few of them survived it. The cult, driven by desperation, sought to implant Diabolos cells into these children, with Olivier being the only one found compatible. Nelson attempts to justify these actions by arguing that strength was necessary to combat the demon, hence the extreme measures taken. However, Alpha exposes the truth that even after Olivier became stronger, her assigned mission was to procure more cells. Through the utilization of ancient artifacts and Olivier's abilities, the cult succeeded in creating the Beads of Diabolos. The Beads of Diabolos were capsules endowed with the power to grant individuals anti-aging abilities and immense strength. However, these miraculous drugs had its flaws. It had to be consumed regularly, and the capsules were difficult to produce. After Alpha exposes the cult's true nature, Nelson reluctantly acknowledges his affiliation with the Order of Diabolos. However, before he can take any action, Delta stabs him from behind. Nelson falls into the water, but miraculously survives. When Nelson emerged from the water, the sanctuary is once again engulfed in blinding white light. Surprisingly, Nelson is able to create multiple copies of himself. Shadow Garden and Nelson prepares for battle, while Sid and Aurora goes deeper into the sanctuary. Episode 13. Together with some members of the Shadow Garden, Nelson heads for the sanctuary's center. Delta attacks Nelson and destroys most of his copies. Nelson is overwhelmed by Delta's speed and power. Since they were close to the sanctuary's center, he was supposed to be way stronger than her. Few minutes into the fight, Delta stabs Nelson, and this move takes them back to the original place where they started in the sanctuary. Nelson summons Olivier to help out in the battle, while the other members of the Shadow Garden reunites with the part that has been fighting against Nelson. Elsewhere, Aurora and Sid find themselves in the memory of a battlefield. The duo sees a younger version of Aurora crying. They are suddenly faced by zombies, and Sid had to fight them alone because there was no magic there. To end the battle, the younger Aurora had to be killed. When Sid realized this, he stabs her, and they are both taken back to the center of the sanctuary. This is where it gets a bit dicey. The only way that they would be able to escape from here is if a true descendant comes to their rescue. At the same time, the Shadow Garden exits the sanctuary when they finish their investigation. Nelson suddenly gets notified that someone was already at the center of the sanctuary. He goes over there with Olivier to fight these intruders. When the pair meets with Sid and Aurora, another major battle begins. Olivier gains the upper hand against Sid. Scared that Sid might be killed, Aurora asks him to stop fighting, but Sid declined. Aurora goes as far as agreeing to help Nelson to save Sid's life. As the battle unfolds, Sid, feeling slighted by assumptions of his defeat, engages Olivier once more. However, Olivier's agility catches Sid off guard, resulting in a stab wound. Aurora's face reflects her concern, sensing Sid's slim chance of survival. Nelson, on the other hand, appears confident. Surprisingly, Sid's expression shifts after a moment of apparent pain. He unexpectedly smiles and utters, "Gotcha." It becomes evident that Sid is still very much alive and intentionally allowed Olivier to stab him. The motives behind this maneuver remain unclear for a minute. Episode 14. Sid then goes on the offensive, killing Olivier with just one move. But Nelson was not ready to give up yet. He uses his magical powers to summon an army of Olivier into the sanctuary. Sid remained undeterred by this. It is soon revealed that he has found a way to Tunus magic. Sid then attacks using his full-range atomic powers, and this ends the fight. Aurora then wakes up outside the sanctuary. Aurora was by his side, but her body was gradually disappearing. Aurora tried to communicate with Sid, but was unable to make the request before her time runs out. Meanwhile, Iris suggests to Rose and Natsume, Beta, that they should set up an organization to monitor the activities of the cult and Shadow Garden. In the sauna, Iris and Alexia catch up to discuss recent events and plot their next moves. They came to the conclusion that Nelson was not only part of the Order of Diabolos, but also involved in the crime. However, that's all they know, and returning to the sanctuary for further investigation is out of the question. Iris points out that the secrecy surrounding such a massive facility suggests the organization behind it wields significant influence. Realizing that confronting the adversaries alone was futile, Iris confided everything to her father. However, she was cautioned against taking action, especially with King Oriana's impending visit. To be taken seriously, the sisters need solid evidence. With all other hope lost, the only option available for them was to win the Bushin festival. If they are able to do this, they would gain the credibility and support from the Night Order. Winning the international tournament could draw attention from His Majesty and his council. There were high chances that the cult and Shadow Garden could strike before then. Considering the events that have taken place in this short period, the girls were left with no other option. The only path for the first princess of the Midgar Kingdom to confront the cult and Shadow Garden is by gradually earning the trust of her own people. Winning the Bushin Festival stands as a crucial step in this journey. Episode 15. The annual Bushin Festival tournament attracts warriors from across the globe eager to showcase their skills and prowess. With a long-standing tradition of no one winning 2 consecutive years, Iris Midgar has a chance to make history. However, the competition is fierce this time, with formidable opponents flocking to the city for the Bushin Festival. Meanwhile, Sid sees it as a prime chance to enjoy himself. Sid devises a plan to enter the tournament disguised as a seemingly weak fighter, intending to surprise everyone with his true fighting prowess. To execute this scheme, he seeks assistance from Gamma, the director of the Mitsugoshi Company. After outlining his strategy, Gamma enthusiastically agrees to help him. Their first step involves using a special slime produced by Gamma's company, capable of altering one's physical appearance. Gamma presents Sid with a selection of faces to choose from, among which Mundane Man catches his eye. Having led an unremarkable life and passing away without achieving much, Man's appearance seems ideal for Sid's disguise. With the appearance of Mundane Man now perfected by Gamma and her assistants, Sid embraces the loser vibes he exudes. Adding to the authenticity, he adopts a crippled walk. However, as he ventures outside in his new guise, a warrior named Anaros Niktsayan cautions him against participating in the Bushin festival. Ignoring her advice, Sid, disguised as Mundane Man, remains determined. Another fighter named Keaton implores him to be more flexible and heed the well-meaning suggestion. When Man tells Quentin that he's at least stronger than him, Quentin becomes enraged. Man's refusal to apologize further provokes Quentin, leading to a physical altercation. Anna Rose observes Man's unwavering resolve as he refuses to back down. As the tournament progresses, Man defeats opponent after opponent, showcasing his strength and determination. Advancing to the later stages of the Bushin festival, Man proves that he's stronger than most people perceive. However, his ultimate challenge awaits, facing Goldo Kinmeki, the undefeated warrior brimming with confidence in his victory. Early in the morning, Skell arrives at Sid's door with startling news. Rose, Sid's acquaintance, has not only stabbed her fiancé, Perv Ashat, but has also disappeared since the incident. Authorities are now searching for her, adding an unexpected twist to the unfolding events. Episode 16. Natsume and Alexia are stunned by the unexpected news that Rose has fled to the north of the royal capital. As Sid, disguised as Mundane Man, continues his winning streak in the tournament, spectators are left puzzled by his unexpected success. However, this outcome aligns perfectly with Sid's intentions, and he is pleased with the unfolding events at the Bushin festival. Observing the current state of affairs, many believe that Iris is poised to claim victory in the tournament once more. Meanwhile, Iris is preoccupied with important meetings. She meets with King Raphael and Perv Ashat to discuss security arrangements in the aftermath of the attack on the Perv Ashat. Despite Mundane Man's surprising performance at the Bushin festival, the audience remains skeptical, attributing his success to luck. Anaros Nichtsein closely monitors his every move, only to find that his movements occasionally surpass human perception. This leaves her puzzled, as she has never encountered a warrior capable of such feats before. Next, Mundane Man faces Goldie Gilded. As the battle commences, Goldie lunges forward, aiming to decapitate Mundane Man with his sword. At the 11th hour, Anna Rose observes Man strangely cracking his neck, narrowly evading the fatal strike. Goldie, astonished by Man's improbable survival, presses for an explanation. However, receiving no satisfactory response, Goldie unveils the extent of his magical abilities. As Goldie lunges forward once more for a devastating attack, Man unexpectedly counterattacks and emerges victorious. Confusion reigns among the spectators, with only Anaros grasping the sequence of events. She explains to Quentin that Man sneezed at the crucial moment, causing Goldie to inadvertently run into the trap. While Anaros insists there's more to Man's victory than luck, Quentin scoffs at her analysis and departs, vowing to put Man in his place. In their subsequent bout, Man and Quentin face off, and Man effortlessly triumphs, proving his superiority once again. Anaros, now convinced of facing a formidable opponent, confronts Man in the hallways, issuing a warning that luck won't be on his side when they meet in battle. Episode 17. Sid wakes up from a nightmare to meet his friends banging on his door. They were all excited about locating Rose to bag the 10 million Zeni prize. Although Sid wasn't enthusiastic about the whole affair, he hurriedly leaves his place when he spots his sister headed over. While on the streets, Sid overhears the sounds of Moonlight Sonata. To his surprise, he discovers Epsilon, much like Natsume, has adeptly applied the lessons Sid imparted. Meanwhile, Natsume and Alexia venture into the royal capital's underground passages in pursuit of Rose. Shocked by their friend's actions against her fiancé, they are driven by a relentless quest for truth. Rose, who was heavily injured, began to reflect on the misstep that led to her current predicament. She had gone to meet her father, the king of the Oriana Kingdom, in the royal capital. However, she was shocked to learn of his ailing state and apparent lack of coherence. It dawned on her that the king was being manipulated, with her fiancé and other nobles effectively running the kingdom in his stead. Rose came to the conclusion that Perv Ashat is somehow entangled with the cult, adding another layer of complexity to her predicament. Determined to prevent the spread of corruption to other kingdoms, Rose takes decisive action by confronting her fiancé in the Oriana Kingdom. She tried to kill him, but failed. As a result of her actions, Rose was being pursued and condemned by all. This compelled her to seek refuge in the underground tunnels of the royal capital. It was while in this state that she remembers Sid. Almost immediately, she hears someone playing Moonlight Sonata somewhere in the tunnel. When she got closer, she found out that it was Shadow. Shadow scolds her for her loss of determination. He then offers to bestow power upon her on the condition that she remains committed to fighting for her beliefs. Agreeing to the terms, Rose accepts, and Shadow imparts his remarkable abilities to her. Not too long after, Rose is surrounded by members of the cult. She easily destroys them with a single swing of her sword. Episode 18. Sid's sister Claire finally catches up with him and gives him VIP tickets to the Bushin festival. She wanted him to be around because she would be participating in place of Princess Rose. On the day of the event, Sid arrives at the stadium and is taken aback to discover that his seat is next to Princess Iris. Shortly after, Sid excuses himself under the pretext of his upcoming match against Anaros Niktzane. Left alone in the VIP section, Iris is approached by Perv Ashat, who engages her in a discussion about current political affairs. As the battle between the two mundane man and Anaros unfolds, Anaros initiates her strategy, aiming to swiftly conclude the fight. However, she is taken aback by her opponent's astonishing speed, which catches her off guard. She changes her tactics and waits for mundane man to make his move. With patience and precision, Anaros anticipates man's attack, planning to leverage it to her advantage and seize control of the battle at the 11th hour. Even after all the planning, Anaros finds herself unable to stop mundane's assault, ultimately succumbing to defeat as he knocks her out. Prior to the fight, Iris had remarked to Perv Ashat about mundane's confidence, suggesting he might have an advantage over his opponent. Determined to uncover the identity of the mysterious warrior who defeated Anaros, Perv Ashat promptly dispatches one of his men to investigate. Anaros is visibly inspired by their exchange, perhaps reflecting on her own journey and choices. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the tournament, Iris secures a decisive victory over her opponent, effortlessly advancing to the next round of the Bushin Festival. Sid is impressed at how successful his manipulation has been at the Bushin Festival. Sid, disguised as mundane man. However, as he ponders his next move, Sid is uncertain about how he wants to conclude the ongoing drama. Episode 19. As the Bushin Festival tournament nears its final rounds, Sid finds himself enjoying the action from the VIP section, courtesy of his sister. Seated next to Princess Iris, Sid is surprised to see Beatrix, the goddess of war whom he has encountered before, appears as a special guest of Iris. In another location, Perv Ashat resorts to drugging Rafael Oriana before escorting him to the stadium to witness the Bushin Festival. After closely observing mundane man over the past few days, Princess Iris finally faces him in battle. Iris finds herself overwhelmed by the persistent visions of her defeat at the hands of mundane man. Despite her determination, mundane man effortlessly overpowers her, slamming her to the ground and holding his sword to her throat without facing any resistance. Now, that wasn't even the highlight of the day. Just moments after mundane man's victory over Princess Iris, Rose makes her way towards the VIP stands with the intention of completing a secret mission. She then comes face to face with Perv Ashat, who is delighted to see Princess Rose present. He eagerly commands Rafael Oriana to greet his daughter, unaware of the impending danger lurking in the shadows. Rose bows to greet her father and then stabs him to death. Before Perv Ashat can fully comprehend Princess Rose's intentions, she presses her sword against his neck, poised to take her own life. Suddenly, mundane man leaps into the VIP section, revealing himself to be Shadow. In that moment, Rose recalls a childhood encounter with a vigilante known as Stylist Bandit Slayer, who had once saved her. Connecting the dots, Rose realizes that Shadow, Mundane Man, and Stylist Bandit Slayer are one and the same. Moved by Shadow's words of encouragement, Rose decides to endure the challenges. Shadow convinces her to flee, but just as he prepares to confront Perv Ashat, they are interrupted by an attack from Beatrix. Episode 20. Following Beatrix's attack on Shadow, the incident is swiftly classified as a terrorist attack. While the guests of honor are evacuated to safety, soldiers recognize the imminent threat extends beyond the confines of the stadium. Perv Ashat makes a quick escape, likely intending to return to the Oriana Kingdom. Meanwhile, the deceased body of King Garrick is respectfully placed in custody under the king's orders. Meanwhile, Beatrix engages in a fierce battle with Shadow. Princess Iris soon joins the fight, wielding a mithril blade. Despite their combined efforts, Shadow proves to be a formidable opponent, skillfully managing to contend with both Princess Iris and Beatrix simultaneously. Having pushed Iris and Beatrix to their limits, Shadow unveils his ultimate atomic abilities, leaving them utterly stunned. The brilliance of his power blinds them, and by the time they regain their sight, Shadow has vanished without a trace. Princess Iris, grappling with the bitter taste of defeat, finds herself overwhelmed with emotion, collapsing to her knees in tears. As the king orders for an investigation into the event and for them to hunt down Shadow, it later becomes evident that Shadow was merely a decoy, using himself to divert attention from the Oriana Kingdom and prevent their involvement in trouble with Midgar. After narrowly escaping the guards in the Midgar Kingdom following the murder of Rafael Oriana, Rose finds herself alone in the dark alleys, uncertain of her next move. Lost in thought, she is suddenly confronted by Alpha, who presents her with two options: continue fighting alone or join the Shadow Garden. Princess Rose pledges her allegiance to the Shadow Garden. In the ensuing days, Rose travels alongside Alpha until they reach a town, where their journey continues on foot. They navigate through the territory, crossing rugged mountains until they finally arrive at the ancient capital of Alexandria, serving as the base of operations for the Shadow Garden. In Alexandria, Rose encounters Lambda, who who assumes the role of her trainer. Under Lambda's guidance, Rose undergoes rigorous training, preparing her for the challenges that lie ahead. As part of her induction into the shadowy organization, Rose is officially recruited and undergoes a symbolic transformation. Stripped of all her personal belongings and former identity, she is reborn as a nameless soldier, designated as Soldier 666. That's all, folks. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe for more amazing content.